you for being with us here today. We now move on to our last and final panel of the evening, titled The Scenes We Made, which will be centered around Shanta Gokhale's eponymous book, published last year. We have on the panel with us Alyque Padamsee, Shanta Gokhale, Akash Khurana, and Sanjna Kapoor as the moderator, talking about theatre in Bombay between the 1950s and the 1980s. Without further ado, I shall quickly introduce our panelists. Alyque Padamsee is a noted theatre personality and one of the pioneers of Indian English drama in the 60s. He has been instrumental in supporting Indian playwrights by setting up the theatre group's Sultan Padamsee Award for playwriting. He is well known for his unique productions such as Jesus Christ Superstar, Final Solutions, and The Midnight Knock, among many more. He is also the recipient of the Sangeet Natak Academy Award, the Padma Shri, and the Tagore Ratna Award. Our next panelist, Shanta Gokhale, is a Bombay-based novelist, playwright, translator, theatre historian, and cultural critic. Her novel, Crowfall, translated from her award-winning Marathi original, Tya Varshi, was published in 2013. She has also translated several Marathi plays into English and written screenplays for films and documentaries. She has edited the book, The Scenes We Made, which documents the ideas and people that shaped theatre in Bombay since the 1960s. Our next panelist, Akash Khurana, has been acting, writing, and directing for the stage and the screen for over 3 decades. In the 80s, he founded and edited Ovation, Bombay's only English language theatre journal at that time. He is a core member of Arpana, Motley, and Aquarius Productions, 3 of India's foremost theatre companies. His recent theatre projects include Tuesdays with Maury, Faith Healer, and A Friend's Story, an adaptation of Vijay Tendulkar's Mitrachi Goshta. Sanjna Kapoor, who will be moderating the session, is the co-founder and director of Junoon, an organization that aims to make theatre and the arts an integral part of our everyday lives. At Junoon, she spearheads the Arts at Play for Schools program and curates it for eager audiences. She instigated the creation of the India Theatre Forum and is currently part of the core team, as well as a core team member and facilitator for the strategic management in the art of theatre. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So when I was asked to do this, I am very foolish sometimes, most of the time, because I read my emails very rapidly. And I said, yes, of course, because I just finished reading this completely delicious book. And I said, anything to do with that book and anything to do with Kala Ghoda, yes, I'll do it. And then I went back to the email and read it carefully, and it said I was to moderate. And I thought, oh no, help! I don't know how to do that. So I shall try. So today you are my guinea pigs to experience my very first attempt at moderation. But I tell you why I'm excited about being here today, because I want to know what each one of these 3 wonderful people have to say and have to share. And what has been so precious about this book for me is that it turned folklore into something a little more tangible. Because I grew up hearing stories about these 3 institutions, the Bulabai Auditorium and Walchand Terrace, both of which I never, ever experienced. But then Chabaldas, which I did completely experience, but towards the fag end of its life, I even did workshops there and saw shows there. But there was this amazing folklore about these institutions and what they housed and the work that they generated. And it was extraordinary for me. And I always wanted to know more and more and more. And I was so exasperated that there was no book about them. And here we have this really precious chronicle, this oral tradition, these words straight from people who've experienced these times. And so I grabbed this opportunity today to try and ask 3 questions, basically, that I want to know about. But I think that what is so wonderful about this panel is that I ask you, all 3 of you, of course, to talk, even as audience members, because that's really essential. In theater, we have to have an audience. We have to have you. And so as audience, through this period of looking at what was happening in theatre in this incredible city of ours, but also quite specifically from your own individual perspectives. Shanta, you're a writer, and in many, many avatars, and what has that been for you? Alyque, you've been an actor as well, and a director, but primarily a director, and what has that journey been for you? And Akash, of course you're also a director, but an actor, if you could, that's also what has meant so much to your work in theatre. And so if we go to a line that this book actually talked about, and it said, if we define experimental as the new, which stands in conscious opposition to the old, then the theatre that happened in these three spaces was clearly is mine, experimental. So my question, and I'll start with Shanta, with you, and I'm going to be very mean about time. I've got my watch. Because what we're going to do is we're going to try and keep to time. And if you get 5 minutes to answer, then we have a chance to have a conversation with you as well at the end, and that'll be nice. But my question to all of you, and Shanta to start with, what do you think in this period of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and going into the 80s, and you can break it up into different periods if you want, what were the triggers that instigated this newness, this experimentation? What provoked it?
To begin with, independence. We were suddenly a new country, and a new kind of society was forming. A new kind of politics was on the way. And it was certainly a time when young people particularly felt that this was their time, and it was in their hands to change it. And through every possible field and channel. And theatre then was very prominent on the cultural scene. It was hugely acknowledged, mainly by the media, which gave it a huge boost. Theatre was discussed back and forth. It was discussed in addas. It was discussed at university, colleges, everywhere. So there was a kind of sense that theatre wasn't merely there to, certainly not merely there to entertain, though it needed to entertain also, but it was going to be a formative force in the forging of a new society, which is why the old style theatre, and I'll now confine myself to Marathi, which upheld old values, which are still values, but to build them up emotionally and sentimentally, mother, and soon after that, Bharat Mata, all this way of looking at things completely changed for the young people who looked around themselves and saw that there was unemployment, people didn't have homes, there was poverty, there was all of these things. So in the 50s, when a very young Vijay Tendulkar started writing, these were the things that he was writing about. So there was suddenly a direct connect between the reality around and the plays that were being written and done. And this really was the important kind of push for a new kind of writing, where sentiment and melodrama were knocked off their pedestals and reality.
And the audience was ready for this.
The audience was had to be got ready. It was a process. It wasn't going to happen overnight. But because the audience also was young, they too were looking for something that connected with their lives. So they did start coming, and the audience built up. They began to appreciate. And of course, by the 80s, Tendulkar was being performed on the mainstream.
Yes.
So you can see from 50s to 80s that there was definitely this kind of acceptance in the audience for raw realism. 5 minutes.
Very good. Very good. Alyque, your 5 minutes. You give him the mic.
Good evening, friends. I've been in the theatre now for 65 years as an actor and director, and I really believe, very sincerely, that the play is one thing and the production is quite another thing. And it's not just the play is the thing, because once the director and the actors get hold of the script, they make the intentions of the author walk and talk. Just a flat printed page, and suddenly it becomes real life. And I think the plays that I followed and wanted to do were plays that were exploring the human condition. What are people like when they're faced with a riot? That's why a play like Final Solutions, which was about the Bombay riots in '93, was a play that reached out to the audience. And what I found very interesting as I've gone on in the theatre, I'm currently directing my 75th play. I am 85. Okay. So what it does is, if it didn't reach out to the audience, but when we say reach out, what do we really mean in the theatre? And the experimental theatre was a wonderful place, and all the venues that have been mentioned in Shanta's book were really very exciting, very young, very experimental. But so was a lot of other theatre in Bombay. My own mother's house, Kulsum Terrace, is very well known as a sort of home of English theatre, and St. Xavier's College Dramatic Society is also known. And we've been doing work a lot, obviously, in English. I have done plays like Ismat Chughta's Pagal Khana, which was a wonderful play done at Prithvi, where when we locked the doors, I don't know who was in charge then, Sanjna, and it was about an asylum, and at the end of it, the asylum inmates escape, and they rush out of the doors and then lock the doors so the audience can't get out, the lights are off, and everything is turmoil up and down. And when I did it at St. Xavier's College, in the hall of St. Xavier's College, and the audience sat on the balconies, and at the end of the play, people climbed up, the actors climbed up, and the mad people, and I was sued by a very wonderful Parsi Dowager Duchess from Malabar Hill, saying that you assaulted us and my ankle is paining for the last 2 weeks and I'd like compensation. Things like that. Engaging the audience. But what really I feel that the theatre today has to acknowledge that the audience, Sanjna said it quite rightly, the audience is actually why the play is being done. Whatever you may say, you can have a coterie audience. I did a play in my mother's drawing room for 30 people a night for about 50 or 60 shows. And it was right in the middle of the drawing room. The audience sat around, only 30 people a night. But they were so engrossed in it because it was literally within spitting distance. And one of my actors, Bommy Kapoor, was very famous for spitting. And so the audience was drenched at every performance. But that apart, what it was and what I realize now today, and this is a late arrival, it's been in the back of my mind, and I'm sure Mr. Khurana will will agree with me. After each play, now if you want to engage the audience, it's not enough just to put the play on the stage. You need to get the audience reaction to the play. Not just to the production, oh, Alyque, brilliant direction, oh, Jason, what a great performance, oh, Kabir, you look so good in the nude, in Tughlaq, and so on. No, it is engagement with the play itself. That really is where the theatre starts. And I now have a policy that after every performance of every one of my plays, we have an interaction with the audience. What does the audience think of the work, of the play, and as it was delineated by the production, but what do they think of the material of the play? And I'm finding that today young audiences are very keen. Calcutta is the best, by the way. Calcutta audiences are, I think, the most literate in India. Not because of the applause, but because of the involvement. When I did recently The Midnight Knock, which is based on a play written about the Chilean after the dictator's rule. And I asked the audience, I said, let's talk about free speech in a totalitarian regime. And those who'd like to stay, 50% of the audience stayed. I've done this before. 10% in Bombay, a little 15% in Bangalore, very good in Hyderabad. I don't know, the audiences there seem to want to know more about the play other than just the production. And I think this engagement with the audience is where the theatre should be heading, because we're not doing it for ourselves. That's just an ego trip. We're doing it for an audience, but an audience that is silent, you know. They talk about the silent majority. I talk about the silent minority of the audience who want to know more about the script of the play, about the process of how the playwright arrived at that. What is he talking about? How does he engage with society or family or whatever? And that, I think, is the strength of, and the plays that were done, Shanta, at that time, I didn't see all of them. I saw a few. I sat very uncomfortably on the Chabildas floor, school floor, and saw one of Dubey's very powerful plays. And it elevated me, and I wish it had elevated me to a chair, but that can't be. It was somebody's got called Poor Box Productions is now on with our friend Ma Banu. But really, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. To the audience, they were there to see the play, to see the performance of the play, but very rarely got a chance to interact with the audience. And there were lots of times when I wanted to talk to the actors, the director, and so on. And I think if the theatre is going anywhere, it should be going in the direction we've got the playwright, we've got the director, we've got the engagement of the actors, but we always forget to engage the audience in a dialogue. And I think that's where the new theatre will be going. Thank you.
So you've answered my last question.
Sorry.
Oof, 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 oof. Anyway, I'll ask you the first question at the end again.
Ask.
But that's wonderful, because anyway, we're coming to that, because that is something we're going to come to. But I'll come back with more questions to you. Akash, here you go.
Thanks, Sanjna.
Thank you.
Okay, hi and good evening. I want to plug Shanta's book first. And this is really not about sales, it's about what it can do for the young generation. They say, yeah, okay, yeah, I have to be kind. No, I mean the next generation. You've already arrived, you're a rock star. So, they say that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. I think this is history which should be remembered, and you should be condemned to repeat it. I don't know, many of you might not have read the book yet. So I want to just mention the context of what the book is actually saying. It talks of three parameters: space, people, and place. Now this is very interesting that, like they say, space is easy. If you build it, they will come wherever. And that's what's happening. I mean, I've never attended a session like this in my experience, which is wonderful to have so many people here. So space is secondary. If there are people, they'll write plays. People have ideas. But critically, what the book suggests is that the triggers that Sanjna speaks of, the catalyst to change for, and you know, don't shy away from the word experimental, because really this is a page turner. The most stimulating part of this book is really where there is an editor, there's a preface by Govind Deshpande, who questions whether all that's there is really experimental. He says, experimental, what was that? And wonderfully, and I haven't seen the likes of this before, there is an editor's preface which rationally counters that and says, and gets more flexible, and which is what Shanta mentioned, that really, let's open it up. It's what the difference between the old and the new. So I'm saying that, again, when it comes to people as catalysts, they were those who caused that was the catalyst that caused the change. So there's an interesting history here in terms of spaces and people. The first chapter is on the Bhulabhai Institute. Now that was a space which was already having an arts agenda, apart from the theatre, but there was Ibrahim Al-Qazi, who had a vision, and he was highly influenced by the theatre of the West, who discovered the Bhulabhai Institute, and it became an adda as well as a performance space. And then she talks about the Walchand terraces, which was not a performance space. It was an adda. But what happened was that there was this lamp that Arvind Deshpande and Satyadev Dubey rubbed, and a genie called Vinod Doshi came and blessed them, granted their wish. And it became an adda, a melting pot for all the ideation that happened. So much so that while there was always this twin city syndrome of Pune and Bombay happening all the time, even then, there was a distinct kind of interest of the creative artists from Pune in Mumbai. And they came and, you know, of course, Girish Karnad was an aberration. He used to write in Kannada and he moved. That's all in the book. So it was there and it was a gift. That was Walchand Terraces. And then Chabildas was a school hall that was converted. It wasn't built, it wasn't gifted. And the missionaries in that were Sulabha Deshpande and Arvind Deshpande. And Dubey exploited the situation, and then the rest followed. And then came the master builders, which don't really get the mention they deserve, because that's begging for a sequel to this book. There were Shashi Kapoor and Jennifer, the builders of Prithvi Theatre. And there was, before CSR became a buzzword, the Tatas with Jamshed Baba at the helm. So Prithvi was both an adda and a performance space. And still is. And the NCA was really very less of an adda and a lot of performing space. So that's been the graph. So having said that, you want me to continue?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll stop you, don't worry.
Yeah, okay.
We've done our negotiation.
Okay, so what's peculiar is that I belong to the threshold between the end of the book and the beginning that it triggers off. Because I arrived in Bombay to permanently settle here, then Bombay, now Mumbai, in 1977. And I think, speaking of space as a trigger, I must make a small kind of, I must become a little more personal. You know, this space is a trigger for nostalgia. And it's interesting that when I started my first job here in 1977, it was next door in the Army and Navy building at Telco, Tata Motors. And there I met Mr. Hoskote, Ranjit's father, who was a genius in his own right, and I learned solving crossword puzzles from him in quick time. And Ranjit, as we all know, is one of the curators of this wonderful initiative. And so, Ranjit, wherever you are, great going in every which way, and you deserve a big hand. Thank you. And Okay. And then what was wonderful is that this, for me, became my extended Army and Navy building, my extended Bhulabai Institute. Because there was Stuttgart Hall and Max Muller Bhavan ahead, Jahangir Art Gallery, and what do I say, previews at Regal and Eros, and I had access to all this. And World Cinema at the Little Theatre, and the great thing was Sunil Shanbag, who's mentioned in great detail in the book, used to be with the Tatas then and worked at Ballard Estate. So if Sunil is also not here, because otherwise I would have embarrassed him a lot, because I hold him responsible for a lot of things that have happened to me, mostly good. And then across the Oval was Belvedere Court, where Zul Velani used to stay. And one of my friends from XLRI, who's PG there, and I visited him, and there were these rehearsals going on, which for a play that Anmol Velani, Zul's son, was directing. Anmol now is in the IFA. And I got cast because I was fresh out of Jamshedpur, and with performances in Moliere's The Miser and Peter Schaffer's Equus, and so I got cast in that. And Sunil saw me in that and cast me in The Unknown General for the Alliance Française. And the book mentions that Satyadev Dubey, after his feeling rejected and being emitted out of the Walchand Terraces, stayed some time with the Benegals. And around that time, he was with Shyam Benegal on location, filming Shashi's Junoon. And Sunil wrote to him about me. Okay, we used to write...
We are going into cinema now.
No, I'm coming back. Inland letters he wrote. I mean, Dubey came back, he cast me in a mosaic play called Vatslav, which was actually, the Hindi version was Abe Bevkoof, and that's where the nightmare began for me. Because he cast me in a part where I had to dress up in a costume that was meant for the English winter. And I was performing at Chabildas. And projection was a nightmare and was sweating, and I had to prove my mettle. So I came to zero base again, and the same play went to Prithvi, which is, to my mind, a dream, but really a spoiler for actors, because anyone who opens a play there will have a damn tough time staging it anywhere, because it's so actor friendly and hence unfriendly. True?
So in terms of provocators, you had individuals, you had people who provocated you, who provoked you, who triggered you, and then this spaces around here and the cultural engagements that were available to you at that time. Alyque, you had the opportunity of having your mother's drawing room, but also so much more. I'm wanting you to all, before we go to the next question, really tell me whether you think, you talked of space more in terms of time, of what was going on at that time, a new country, a new nation, but were there any more concrete spaces that actually trigger? And I say this simply because I've spent 21 years running a space, and I think spaces are very important. But what I love about this book is it takes you into a journey of understanding how, you said brick and mortar, making a building is it's easy, but to breathe life into it is not easy. So how did those lives get breathed into a Chabildas, which is a school hall, or a Bhulabai Desai Institute, which was a bungalow, and Walchand Terrace? What happened? What instigated that life?
Since I've not been on the stage, I have been, in that sense, an audience and then a critic. So space as such didn't impact my connection with theatre as much as it would with an actor who is standing there and sensing that space.
But doesn't space mean something to you as an audience? You want to go and hang at Prithvi, or do you want to go and hang at...
Yes, sir. So I'll come to that. Yes, Prithvi is a dream, sure. And some of my finest theatre experiences belong to Prithvi. But My very first theatre experience was at Balmohan High School, next door to my house. Balmohan, which later people call St. Bowles, just to bump it up socially. But it wasn't even like Chabildas. It was an ordinary hall with a makeshift stage on which I saw the critic Madhav Manohar's adaptation of Gorky's Mother, Ai, with Asha Bhende playing the mother, and I will never get those images out of my head. It had nothing to do with how the space was appointed as a theatre space. It was entirely the performance and entirely the power of the play.
That's the life breathed into it.
Yes. But there's another space which I occupy, which is newspaper space. And how did that get triggered is also a tiny story. There was a venerable journalist named Dinkar Sakrikar who ran a small newspaper, a weekly newspaper, I think it was. And he said to me, we don't have anybody doing theatre reviews, and I would like you to. So I said, you would like me to, but I would not like to because I don't know the first things about theatre. I mean, I watch, I appreciate, but to be a theatre critic is something much more than that. So he said, you will have to start. And actors, have their own faux pas on the stage. I'm giving you space to make your mistakes. So please, and with great trepidation, I started writing theatre reviews. And that is a space which I have treasured and which I have tried to build up as a kind of support system for what's happening on stage.
It's a very good point, I think, that you've made, Shanta. And that is that we talk about spaces as physical spaces, but the media is a very important space to have because the media can not only publicize, I'm not talking about ads in the media, but I'm talking about reviews. Reviews, it is said that Kenneth Tynan, who's a great British critic and a fantastic man, actually revived British modern theatre. Just one man. Because the reviews he wrote, I think you will agree, Shanta, you've read them, and all of us have read them, was so incisive and so, they got to the heart of the matter and made you feel you've got to see this play. And then he'd end up by saying, but it's a lousy production. But yet, you wanted to see the play. So what I say is, today, unfortunately, almost all the English newspapers and quite a few of the Gujarati and Marathi newspapers too, theatre at one time in Bombay was given a certain place, a certain significance in the old days. You would always get a review of every single play, certainly in English, in Marathi, in Gujarati even, and certainly in Hindi. But today, Bollywood, good old Bollywood, has taken over all the space in every newspaper, in every magazine, in every TV newscast, in everything. There is no space left for anything else but Bollywood. You switch on the TV, it's Bollywood. You go to the movie house, sorry we can't show that big film coming from Hollywood because Bollywood is bigger and got more muscle. So what has happened is it has really dumbed down the audiences even for theatre. I find today that unless you can have a local touch, I think you'll agree with me, in your play, you will not get full houses, right? And as soon as you say it's a masala comedy, everyone will run, even if it's in English, but it's not actually in English, it's in Hinglish, which is a new variation and actually will probably have a larger following than the English language itself worldwide, because we have such a huge population, and I believe currently about 200 million Indians can make themselves understood in English, and you only have to go to a political rally. I was in Pune recently on one of those, and it's amazing how English is spreading all over wherever the you might say, Indian diaspora is. But the other point I'd like to make about what's in your book, you don't touch on it, but I'll just briefly, Kulsum Terrace, which was my mother's house, very big with terraces, 3 terraces and so on, and another building that she owned, Chotu Terrace, became, for the English language theatre, a very important experimental space where you could rehearse there and you could perform in the same space. The great problem today is you can never, am I right, rehearse and perform in the same space. To rehearse in the JBT, Jamshed Bhabha Theatre, will cost you a lakh of rupees for a 4-hour period, and if you want to perform there, it'll cost you between 3 and 4 lakhs for a show. So there's no question of having rehearsals there. There used to be a rehearsal room in the Tata Theatre, which I thought was an excellent idea, but that too seems to have sort of faded away because there are workshops being held there. But unless there is a space in Bombay for all kinds of theatre, and I must say recently, the NCPA has been encouraging all kinds of language theatre and all kinds of music and all kinds of dances, become an active player in the cultural this of Bombay. Otherwise, it was just a space which you hired and performed your play and got out pretty fast because they had a 4-hour deadline. If your play was 3.5 hours and you didn't wrap up your set in time, you were charged extra. But that apart, it is wonderful. Bombay has so many philanthropists, and I would say that, Doshis are only one of them. The Mahindra and Mahindra recently has become very active in the theatre, and the Aditya Birla Group, and it's wonderful to see this because, frankly, spaces, to hire spaces today, and we all know the shortage of spaces in Bombay anyway, but that is really what we need. We need a place where we can rehearse and perform. And I was hoping that Prithvi Theatre would become that, but it's become so popular that you don't get a chance to really do a series of rehearsals there. But I would say the spaces that we're talking about, both in the media, very good point, and in halls, if that's encouraged, then theatre can flourish, and experimental theatre along with traditional theatre.
I love him. He just answers all my questions before I ask them. You're very naughty. I shouldn't have told you. I told you what my questions were going to be. I should have kept it all a secret. No, but it's true.
I can't remember a word you said to me.
But there you go. But actually, Alyque, actually what's it leads automatically into also the question of where we are today. And what I believe is a really exciting time that we're in today, but it's also a dangerous time. So there's a double-edged sword here, is that there is I think, a very new, fresh energy in Bombay theatre. There is a sense of a real community. Now, I'm saying all this to be challenged by it, so you can disagree with me or add to it or whatever. But I feel that there's a sense of a community amongst theatre groups, across languages, across groups. It's not so cliquish where you belong to a group and that's it. I think now you as an actor are more independent and can work with various people. As a light designer, you can. As a writer, as a director. Now, is this a of value is a question to you. Does this make us a complacent theatre, or is it really, are we on a cusp of moving into the possibility of a very exciting stage in theatre in this city?
I think whatever the state of the art is, it's not a problem, frankly. And the fact that it has happened is a natural order. And I think this is here to stay. And if you look at innovation, that's one of the innovations that's happened, that these communities or groups are actually now migratory groups. So while it was Mumbai-centric or Pune-centric, and some travel, with Alyque, of course, go to Delhi and even London with this place, but now you will find groups from other cities doing almost pan-India travel and taking their shows across. I have an interesting example here. You know, when the Prithvi started, it was called the Prithvi Theatre Workshop. And just a couple of years down the line, the workshop was dropped. And that, to my mind, in the threshold of that time, was the single most significant motive of the change or the gap between intent and the need to sustain theatre. And clearly the answer is here. It's an adda which is wonderful, space which is limited, and we need more such spaces. So migratory kind of thing is, travel is part of that need. And because actors get busy and there's not enough talent in terms of the larger resource pool, the fact of the matter is, by default and by a reduced kind of sense of possessiveness in politics, talent travels between, there's an intergroup travel also, between actors moving from one group to the other. In fact, my next production is probably, it's on the cards, is a collaboration between our group, AK Various Productions, Motley, another group which I'm part of, and a really great group from Pune, which is Asakta. So Mohit Takalkar might direct Nasiruddin Shah and myself and some others, and there will be talent from Pune and Mumbai as well. So that's one natural order and emergence that has happened. And the other, while we are looking for space, a lot of initiatives have been taken in alternate spaces. And chiefly among them are, and here's the trigger of legacy, Sanjna, doing Junoon, Quasar, doing QTP and Thespo, one of the greatest initiatives ever for the youth. And to some extent, the AK Various Productions, we're looking for alternative spaces in the suburbs. So you've got lounges, you've got, you've got lounges, you've got cafes, libraries being exploited. And that also is a sign of things to come, because space is critical. There will be search for space. And the other thing that's happening within these new communities and the situation here is new spaces, alternate spaces, will actually give rise to new form and new content. Because you might get a cafe for an hour, so you'll have to write an original work or adapt original work to fit that span. Attention span, because of the kind of media explosion on the web and television, is reduced. So your entertainment quotient has to be very differently positioned for such alternate spaces. So that's happening. And to end actually this unit, I'd like to quote from Shanta's book. And that goes back to the time where how did those spaces develop and how did those energies come in those people. This says, differently inspired groups that came together, driven entirely by an individualistic urge to realize the new ideas and forms of theatre that gripped them. So there was that passion. And what's critical in terms of need for the future is that having the freedom to give free rein to those ideas was in fact the compelling factor, which means there has to be, wherever it is in space, an urge and the freedom to give free rein to these big ideas and the great ideas of the new generation and the people who are going to sort of come after us.
Oh God, the ghost of Dubey, always talking about the theatre ka keeda, and then always going against any rule I'd ever put in place at Prithvi. He'd say, no, this mustn't happen. So he was the freedom, exactly. He's a real bhakt. Oh, you have it.
Yeah, uh, your question. Please repeat.
About today and about is this do you feel that there is a change, do you feel that there is a new energy in the younger groups in Bombay, and are we at a cusp of something quite exciting and new, or are we getting complacent, and is it not so exciting and new? What is it that you feel, honestly?
Yeah, well, yes, Bombay centered in Prithvi. There's a lot of extremely interesting work going on, and a certain amount of give and take. Not as much as there was back in the 60s or 70s. A certain amount. Well, in the sense that a group had X number of actors, another group would be doing a play, and all they had to do was to put out the word that they were doing this play, and you had people from all the other groups coming in and helping out in whichever way. This spirit, which people from outside used to comment on, particularly from Delhi, who held their cards very close to their chests and said, this is amazing, that in Bombay, people are not insecure about their work. There is that overriding passion that theatre is happening, and we are all part of it. I do see that today. And it's not just confined to Bombay. There's a lovely network of young people. There's Shankar in Kerala, Abhishek Majumdar in Bangalore, Mohit Takalkar in Pune, Neil Chowdhury in Delhi, and all of them are friends. Discussing their ideas with each other, meeting each other, shredding each other's work as we used to. In fact, Dubey once said to me, I one day will do a play about which you will not have a single critical word to say. He never did.
He never did.
Yeah, I think people are in a euphoria about the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Let me tell you that one of the greatest theatre people in India is my brother-in-law, Ibrahim Al-Qazi. And we started the theatre group, my brother Sultan Padamsee started, in 1941, with an idea that everyone could be an actor and a few talented people could become directors, and what we really needed were playwrights. And it was a wonderful group in the English theatre I'm talking about. But Al-Qazi, or Elk, which is his nickname, said, this is ridiculous after my brother died. And he said there can only be one director in the theatre group, and that is me. And if you don't agree to this, I'm forming my own group called Theatre Unit. And exactly the opposite of what you're saying pervaded in the 60s and 70s. And if you were in the Theatre Unit, you were forbidden to act for anyone else. Forbidden. And if you did, you never would ever act in an Al-Qazi production. So times do change, thank God. And today, yes, I do find a much more free-wheeling people, you know, who act in QTP productions or will move across to Aquavarius or move here or move there. And there's no ownership of what theatre is. People are free to move around. And please remember, those in the audience who don't belong to theatre groups, that actors, most of the time, who received quite nice, large fees for acting in TV serials and occasionally in movies, get little or nothing when they act on the stage. They barely get enough to their transport costs. That's one of the sad things about the theatre. We don't have a large enough or a heavily paying audience who can allow a budget that will encompass paying actors. And lots of actors come to me and said, Alex, why don't you pay your actors better? I said, because after you've paid the cost of the set, the cost of the hall, the cost of the advertising, the cost of everything, there is no money left to pay for the actors. And there's, even today, playwrights are at least getting a minimum amount for their hard work, which could take 1, 2, 3, or 4 years to write. So the sad part about it is that whatever we say, the theatre in India is still amateur. They can't pay the people who are on the stage to entertain you unless you're going to do bottoms up, bottom sideways, bottom upside down, right?
But I don't know, I think it's changing, Alyque. No? Not enough? Because yeah? Okay. Well, let's see. But I think that there are more people who are who are choosing not to do television because it destroys you. It gives you the worst habits. May wait for that one film, may do advertising, but do various things connected to theatre, voiceovers, workshops, whatever, and still manage to somehow in the theatre. No, but they still. Let's see. I know. Let's see. But there is one last question that may come up, and maybe we'll open it anyway. And my question was actually about, but I'm going to ask this question, but I want you to ask a question as well, because I've talked enough, is what are the needs of today? You've mentioned the needs very correctly, so I think of a space, a theatre space where you rehearse and you create a play and then you perform in. But what are the needs today? But can we get some questions from you as well? And then maybe we can have a conversation.
Hello, this is Alpana, and I have two questions. One is to Sanjna ma'am. What brings you to theatre, and what makes you to keep at it? That's one. And secondly, what do you see the difference between the global theatre and India? So if you can talk about that.
I will just answer the first question and then leave
Yes,
I think
yeah.
this first question is what I said about Satyadev Dubey. We have the kida, that worm that travels around our brain that makes us want and love and be passionate about theatre. And there's absolutely no other reason at all. It's a complete madness, an obsession. But about,
I will answer on her behalf. She inherited. It's in her DNA. Prithviraj Kapoor on one side, and her mother, and her father, Jennifer, and Geoffrey Kendall, who toured the whole of India with his plays. She couldn't escape that kida.
Globally, I get the opportunity thanks to my job. By the way, if you want to bring up one family, two families, or three families, which I've done, you have to have a ability to raise the money outside the theatre. As I said, I've done 75 on my 76th play, and I have never received even 1 rupee as a director of all these plays. And I refused it, even when I was offered, because I think it's shameful that we ask people to rehearse for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and if you're doing a musical, 6 months, and yet the actors have to just come along, and the most you can offer them is chai in a glass, not even a cup. You can't afford a cup. And so, global theatre is only available through government subsidy in Europe. All the countries in Europe, almost all, subsidize the arts because they feel arts is important to producing good citizens. And I was just giving a talk in Pune, and I said, I'm sick of hearing sick of hearing startups which are for technology. And I said, why don't we have startups for the humanities? Why aren't there more young people starting schools, starting medical centers, starting village uplift? There should be more startups in that direction as well. I agree, you need startups in the technology business. But basically, in England and America, in England it is partly subsidized. There's just a few. One is the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is subsidized. One is, of course, the National Theatre, which is totally subsidized. And one is the Royal Court Theatre, which is partly subsidized. In America, there is no subsidy for theatre or for any of the arts. So it is a matter of producing popular plays. Now the theatre, since time immemorial, was the theatre that produced things that made people go out of the theatre thinking, not just laughing or not just saying, well, shall we have a Chinese or a Spanish or a dinner tonight after the theatre, and forgetting all about the play. So all that is succeeding in the West, if you want the global scene, are musicals, and musicals. That's all. The rest of the theatre limps along off-Broadway and usually off-Broadway. So don't tell me about global theatre. Yes, the Moscow Arts was a great theatre. So was, theatre in East Germany, because it was subsidized by the government. But the government doesn't seem to think in our country or anywhere in the East, as far as I know, except Japan, I believe, to subsidize theatre. And therefore, you have to say to the actors, sorry, here is your 10 rupees to get you home by bicycle.
Sanjna, Alex Saab, this is me here.
Stand up.
Okay. Alex Saab, it's a beauty to listen to you people. Alex Saab, this is the person standing in front of you. This is Mukesh here from Worli Seaface, born in and you know, the best thing is that when I was a child artist working with Shashi Saab, Prithviraj Kapoor Saab, Raj Ji, I always felt that Shashi Saab was one of the best Kapoors. But Ranveer Saab directed me in his film Dharam Karam. You know, it was a... Question. Okay, question. Alex Saab, looking at this audience, can you... it's usually amazing. मैं मुंबई के बारे में कुछ कहना चाहता हूँ कि
ना सवाल पूछिए बाबूजी.
मैं सवाल ही पूछ रहा हूँ. Alex साहब, इतनी बेरहम दुनिया है, इतनी बेरहम मुंबई है कि हमने इसका बहुत कुछ सुना है कि स्ट्रगल यहाँ पर खत्म नहीं हो, कहाँ से शुरू होती है, कहाँ खत्म होती है, और न जाने कहाँ लोगों की स्ट्रगल खत्म होगी. इतना क्योस है, फिर भी लोगों को सिटी ने पनाह दिया है. मुंबई में लोग...
सवाल नहीं आया अभी तक.
सवाल
ना माइक लेना होगा मुझे.
Alex साहब,
ना बस बाबू.
ना
बहुत टाइम लिया.
The question is towards him. Alex
आपने सवाल ही नहीं पूछा.
हाँ, मैं क्वेश्चन कर रहा हूँ. Alex साहब, please, I just want you to tell me, Alex साहब, you're the person who has launched so many, right from Lintas and all that I know about you, so many phrases you've launched. Alex साहब, ऐसी क्या बात है जो आप seeing you enact so many roles and all that, what has made you yet stay normal?
That's a good one.
Besides the humor that you have given us the opportunity to listen to, no, basically, if you're interested in the theatre, I think it's been said, but I'll just repeat it, and that is the kira in you is what makes you feel you'll do theatre, whether you have to live in a Zoparpatti or anything else, but you will do theatre because you feel that it's important in your life. And as I say, you don't have to be paid, and all the people acting, and when you go to plays, please applaud the audience, applaud the actors twice. Once for the performance, if you think it was good, and secondly, for acting almost free of charge to give you some entertainment. Thank you.
One last question, I think. Yes,
Hello.
yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
We've done two questions. We'll take yours as well afterwards. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Shreyas. I have one question to all the panelists. We talked a lot about space today, right? I think in the current age now, the emerging idea or the emerging space is virtual space like YouTubes and all. So I just want panels, opinion about, the virtual space which is available and the actual space and what it will, the YouTubes and all, how it will impact the physical spaces. Thank you.
See, theatre by definition is the presence of bodies on the stage and the presence of real flesh and blood bodies in the audience. That is the bottom definition of theatre. It cannot happen in virtual space.
No, sorry, Shanta, I have to disagree with you. Today, the National Theatre of England produces plays in movie form. They are shot extremely well and really very gripping, and they don't do it in very large theatres. They do it at NCP at the moment in the Godrej Theatre, which is an underground theatre there. And I must say, I shared your opinion originally, and I said, how can you, I've videoed many of my plays, but it's not the same thing. But I must say, there is a kind of bridge between theatre and film, which is called filmed theatre. And it is very reasonably priced, I might tell you, and you can put it on for just having a hall and paying whatever the rent of the hall is, and you can charge tickets. They're charging at the NCPA now 700 rupees a seat to watch film theatre. I agree that the human presence on the stage, just like here, it is important to have that, but I think there can be subsets, and the subset that seems to be springing up is film theatre, and it's well worth seeing great performers who cannot come to India and perform here, but can perform at the National Theatre and other theatres around the world. And you say, my God, thank God that I haven't got the money to travel to London to see that, but I can see these great actors in plays, powerful plays, good plays, plays that don't draw big audiences, but plays that it's important if you're a human being to see.
I think that's really sad because I think we come from a tradition of pilgrimage. And I think we should hang on to that. And we need to make pilgrimages to those theatres that we want to see. And we have to hold that dear to us, that's what you do. You save up your pennies and you go all that way, wherever it is. And you experience it, like experiencing the Biennale in Kochi. I mean, it's an experience. If you can see beautiful stuff on computer about it, but to actually go as a pilgrimage is important. One last question.
Hey, I'll just take a minute to tell how important the panel is to me.
But you have to get a question.
Yeah, I'll definitely get to a question. Vikas sir, I come from Nagpur, and stagecraft is something which is run by Akash sir's brother over there. That's my first entry to theatre by my fair lady coming to my school. That's how I came to know about theatre. I saw you in Junoon and I was mesmerized by it. And maybe I got that wrong. And Alex sir for advertising, that's like been my entry. So my small question, which comes from what Alex sir kind of started with, was that, sorry, I don't know anything about you, ma'am, but I think I'll go for the book. Yeah, besides the book. Yeah. The question being, sir, you said lot of people, the theatre that happens right now, there is no interaction with the audience after the play gets over. And I've seen plays in St. Andrews and in Prithvi, and I've waited for some kind of, at least, Nasir saying something, but nothing's ever happened. So, in a single message, if you have to tell the audience who wants to come to the stage, why should we come besides the act? Like, what is that one message in this other ways of entertainment? We should still come to theatre.
I don't get your question. What's the question? What's the question?
No, what should I come to theatre for? If you have to give a message out to the audience, in besides the whole gamut of the entertainment part of it, how should I come to the theatre?
I think I can tell you, I can quote you the New York Times, which is a great paper, by the way, and the critic there said, this is a play that you carry into life. And I think if there's no interaction between drama, plays, and theatre and life, the life you live, then I think we're wasting our time. Do plays that you carry from the theatre into life. They become part of your thinking, they become part of your behavior. And those are what you call theatre that is alive and meaningful. That's why you come to the theatre.
That's a wonderful way to end. Thank you, Alyque. And there's one question there, but you come and ask us individually. But thank you all very, very much. And thank you, Kala Ghoda. And what a wonderful festival this is. Thank you for having us. Thank you.